We all know with international trade, understanding the product, understanding the actual methodologies of how to move product around the world, there's a whole range of complexities. But one of the other things that are really important is understanding the cultural differences between doing business domestically here in Australia and doing businesses in different markets around the world. So I'm a huge fan because I'm a client of Outcome.Life, but we've got on the show today Gerard Holland, who's the CEO of Outcome.Life. Thanks for joining me, Gerard.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me, Lawrence.
Gerard, for the audience, can you please tell us a bit about Outcome and why you started in the first place?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually a chartered accountant by trade, so I spent a long time working in the accounting field in finance.
Great.
And I was a CFO for one of my clients was in international education. Mm-hmm. I had no idea about the industry, and I got to see the outside looking in about what's happening in the sector and also the plight of an international student, and it really opened up my eyes in that international students are extremely brave people. They're courageous, they're picking up their life, moving to another country, often by themselves. And really their motivation is for a better life too. And I believe the reason why people will go and get a degree in an IT field, for instance, is because they want to have a career in that field. And so if they can't end up getting a job in that field at the end of it, the return on investment is sort of close to zero. So when I looked at it, I thought, all right, well, there is an employability issue inside education. There's never been more graduates in the world than there are right now, never been more master's students. So all of a sudden, having a master's degree, you are not differentiated at all. The only way you can differentiate is by experience. And experience will trump education, that's right. And so the other element I saw with international students is that they have this amazingly diversified view of the world because they've grown up in different markets. And so they have a lot to bring to any organisation, even above and beyond a lot of people who've grown up in Melbourne like I have. And so we founded Outcome.Life 5 years ago to help international students with employability, but also to help companies being able to get connected into talent, and particularly for SMEs. So the big end of town, the big four and the banks, they have these grad programs they spend millions of dollars on. And all the talent sort of funnels in that way. But then the SMEs are left with, well, how do I find talent? And so that's what we do. We actually connect graduates, students in all fields mainly into SMEs in order to help them with their effectively supply chain of actually getting talent into their business. And that all happens through internship placements. Often most degrees now include an internship placement. International students need more help in finding those placements. We do that. And then we look after the process end to end. So the company feels supported, the student feels supported. Ideally they get a job at the end of it, but if not, then maybe they might even go back home to their country of origin and be able to help with networks back home through industries.
What you've just touched on there is really valuable for Australian importers and exporters because, as I said at the outset, is that doing business is tough anyway, especially as an SME. It's always a challenge. Tapping into latest skill set, young, innovative, hungry staff who have just come out of uni, as you said, they want to build a good life for themselves. So they're very motivated to do well. They're very motivated to contribute to an SME. But if you're trying to look at bringing product from a market, or actually go and sell product from Australia into an export market, there's nothing better than having someone who actually understands the nuances of that market and the cultural awareness of that market.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the importance of culture, and I've experienced this myself. I've just spent a couple of weeks in India and in Greece as well. Two very different places to do business. And if you actually look at the skills of the future that all the research coming out now, a lot of the time technical capability is 7th, 8th, 9th or 10th.
It's all soft skills, And
it's all the complex capabilities they now call them. And so if you're looking to enter into China or into Indonesia or into Greece, if you actually don't understand how they do business there at a personal level, you're actually, and people even say going to Greece, for instance, if you don't understand that, don't bother. Like you will fail for sure.
And this is where many companies even do the basics wrong. Like in your marketing, they'll use terminologies that can sometimes be offensive, or they'll use some sort of different things that are culturally sort of taboo. You shouldn't be saying those type of things. Here in Australia, especially in Western markets, you can get away with most things, right? But some of those markets can be quite sensitive.
And I think the people connection, it's one thing I've learned in starting a business, is that everything actually does happen through people.
It's all about who you know.
Exactly. So even if you think about if you're a business in Australia that's looking to enter into a new market, by getting a young person in at a grad level or an intern level, they have networks back home. Their parents and their grandparents and their aunties and uncles. You can actually leverage from those networks.
Absolutely.
And that opens up enormous value and enormous opportunity by that people-to-people connection. So you don't have to go and get a managing director on an extremely high salary to open up those networks. you can get the young junior people in to help you do that.
Yeah. The other really valuable part that I see, Gerard, with Outcome is that similar to importers and exporters, even more so in many ways, is the supply chain partners. So if I'm a shipping company, a freight forwarder, an airline, a transport company, a warehouse, you're typically dealing with overseas contacts every day, day in, day out. So as a freight forwarder, you're corresponding with different agents around the world. You need to understand shipping, you need to understand loading ports, descriptions of cargo. So not only have your graduates got IT skills, marketing skills, accounting skills, all this type of diverse skill set, but when you overlay that with a business that has to do with anything with international trade or supply chain, you've just got a whole added range of benefits that come with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that as we get older we probably take for granted is all the new skills that are being developed, and a lot of it's around technology and software. And so a lot of our interns will go into a business to go and review their systems. Yeah. It could be their CRM system, it could be their logistics system, and how that is actually integrating across different markets. Yeah. And so a group of students can actually go in and analyse that as whether maybe they're using the best software or maybe it's that they've got to create more efficiency within that. Yeah. But they're natives to the digital world. And
this is where that competitive advantage is. We call it BI, business intelligence or business analytics. If you're in a supply chain sector provider, whether you're a forwarder, transport company, whatever, to have a competitive advantage, one is system piece. You really need to have that technology evolving and improving all the time, otherwise you're going to quickly be left behind. But also, if you've got a graduate who can help actually sit back, totally objective and say, look, let me do some analytics on the business and see which parts are working, which parts aren't. Maybe we can look at some productivity improvements. Yep. It's a great thing for them to get their teeth into after learning the technical skills, and now they want some practical experience. And it's just a win-win for every party involved.
Yeah, I had, yesterday I presented to about 40 students, and I think about 25% of the room said they want to go down the data analytics path. It's not necessarily taught at uni as that title yet, but the power of data, the millennials are now working. Data. Exactly, so they can come in and you can put them on a side project and say, look, this is what's going on in our database. We've got 50 spreadsheets here, we've got this system, we've got this system. Can we maybe use Tableau or Power BI or one of these contemporary tools to actually start analysing this data and see where we can get efficiencies? It's great roles for these graduates to go and do.
They'll love it. They learn from it, they get exposure for industry, and they get practical experience, as we talked about, that they can either ideally stay with that company longer term, or if it's not an option, they can actually take those skills somewhere else or even back overseas and, as you say, create that network or even bridge the gap.
Yeah, it's a good point. So with international education, it's very favourable in Australia for students to stay on in Australia. They get 2-year working rights, and there is a good pathway to permanent residency. What we're finding now with a lot of businesses is they use the internship program as their grad recruitment program. So instead of deciding if you want to hire someone in a 35-minute interview, you have 12 weeks. Talking to one of our clients yesterday, he sits down his interns every day on day one and says, you have a job in 12 weeks' time, you've got 12 weeks to lose it. Oh, perfect. Make yourself indispensable. But I guarantee if you perform, there is a job here for you. Great. And so they're motivated because that is their foot in the door. And for a company, it's the cheapest way to do grad recruitment.
I was going to talk about costs. So, I mean, for the audience's benefit, how does Outcome work? How do you guys make money, and how do you get paid? And what's the cost involved?
So we get paid by the education providers to do the placements. So we're becoming much more like the American model, Southeast Asia, Colombia, where everyone does an internship. So the unis need to find enough placements, which is quite difficult. So they outsource that to us. And the students are doing work placements. So it's not employment. So that is unpaid internships. They're usually 12 weeks and they're usually 3 days a week.
And insurances, risk, all that sort of stuff?
Is all covered by us or the university. So professional indemnity, public liability, work cover, work safe is all covered by our insurance policy. So there is not an employment relationship with the host company. They get the one thing the host company must do is provide supervision and mentorship so that intern will learn something. That is the onus for them. And they don't have to pay wages for that period, but they must invest in their development.
Yeah, true. And is there an eligibility criteria for Australian SMEs? Do you have to be in business for 3 years? You have to have a minimum turnover, minimum staff number? What's the criteria?
No, people can't work out of a home office, so they must be in a business environment. Victoria now has 240 co-working spaces. Most businesses are now in co-working spaces. So they have to be in an office environment, and say it's a mechanical engineer, they must be working underneath a mechanical engineer. Or a digital marketer is working under someone that has a marketing background. So there must be a level of mentorship that can then suffice to being a bona fide internship where the intern will get value from it, but also we want the business to get value from it.
I know that, as we've talked about before, Gerard, the IT part is strong, accounting, marketing. from a logistics, supply chain, international trade, do you find you've got a good pool of graduates for that?
Yeah, we're finding a lot of students are doing MBAs, are doing Master of International Business, are doing generic IT degrees, and a lot are coming to us now saying they want to work in supply chain.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's because there's been a whole tech revolution which has a supply chain in itself, but there's a lot of students saying to us, we really want to be involved in supply chain. I don't know what it is, but it's a growing
I'm
need.
on a few committees with some universities around the supply chain educational piece. And what we've tried to do, which I think is starting to take hold across the industry globally, not just in Australia, is that we really want to demonstrate to young people why supply chain is interesting as a career. In the past, you'd look at 5-10 years ago, if someone said, look, I want to be in supply chain, the visualization, I'm going to be on a forklift, moving stuff around a warehouse. Now you can say, I'm in supply chain, you're actually doing data analytics, you're actually looking at e-commerce platforms and robots and drones delivering stuff at home. So it is a lot sexier now to supply chain, and young people are getting hungry to get into that.
Yeah, and I think for the international students particularly, there's a connection to home, because I think they can say, well, how can I add value above and beyond what someone that grew up in Australia can do? Yeah. Well, I understand another market better than anyone else does overseas, so if I can be in supply chain, they think they can add more value. And I think maybe there's a flavour of that to it too.
Yeah. Even the language skills. It's
100%.
another, I know so many companies that we work with who have to pay for translation services. Now, if you're going to some of the world's biggest markets, Australia, we've got one of our biggest exports is students, so education. So we should tap into that, we should leverage that. And the give back, the scenario is that, as you say, we mentor them, we educate them, we give them a whole range of practical skills. Yeah,
I think it's important. It's something I'm quite passionate about, is that I think education is our most important export, because the two that sit above it from a GDP point of view are mining related.
They're not long term.
We've got to pull stuff out of the ground. So all of a sudden international education is our most important industry, and we've really got to look after it. I mean, coronavirus is having an impact to the sector in a big way. And I think there's policy and there's a whole lot of things that need to happen at a macro level too, that we've really got to look after the industry. And that includes the business environment in Australia actually engaging with international students. There's a lot of pre-misconceptions about what it is an international student, and they're all furfies. I mean, these are some of the most courageous, motivated, enthusiastic people you'd ever meet. But we're trying to convince more and more businesses, just give some of these people a go, and I guarantee they'll
you've got nothing to lose. You've literally got nothing to lose. It's just a no-brainer in many ways. So, so the best way to get in touch with you, Gerard, and the team is just through their website. Yeah,
www.Outcome.Life is our website. You can fill out a form there. We'll get in touch with you. We make it very safe and very easy for host companies. Jump on a call, understand what your requirements are, and then we do the whole matching process. We take care of all the compliance. We're calling the students during their internship. We'll call the host company during the internship. Just make sure everything's okay.
So you're that whole support network that you need. And even from an office placement point of view, as you said, I think that from what I understand with Outcome, if it is someone who's working in a smaller office, but they need to put someone into a shared office, you guys can sort of help out with some deals with that as well in some cases?
Yeah, I mean, we've even got our own co-working space in Hardware Lane in Melbourne, and we work in co-working spaces around Australia. And that's partnered with Victorian Government in Melbourne. We can provide space as well where we need to, but we've also got collaborations with a lot of the co-working spaces as well, where we can facilitate office space.
Fantastic. Look, Gerard, thanks so much for coming along. Thank you for the interns that we've already experienced ourselves with ATLC, and we'll definitely be looking to have growing and expand that relationship with you in the future as well. As first-hand case study, I can't recommend Outcome.Life strongly enough. We've really had the privilege of working with Gerard, Jack and the team and the interns themselves. So get in touch, tell them you saw them on the Import-Export show, and speak to Gerard or your team. You won't regret it, I promise you. So thanks again, Gerard, and we'll touch base with you every couple of months if that's okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right.